Welcome back, Focus Learners. Today, we're diving into an explainer on a seriously fascinating, mind-bending text called The Chapter of Time, written by an author named Feng. We're going to unpack a metaphysical framework that takes standard physical relativity and literally thrusts it straight into the realm of spiritual antimatter. Honestly, whether you're a total theoretical physics nerd or more into ancient philosophy, this text offers a really unique perspective that tries to bridge the two. Now, we aren't here to take sides or tell you what to believe. We're just here to map out this intricate landscape and make its most out-there ideas crystal clear for you. So here is our roadmap for today. We'll kick things off with the meaning of time, followed by the variables of time. After that, we'll get into flesh versus spirit, then surmounting the clock, and finally wrap it up with going against time. Let's get right into it. Section 1. The meaning of time. Okay, the absolute foundational concept the author presents is that time, well, it completely depends on motion. It's really just an intangible recorder of how matter moves. The text argues that in our material universe, time is everywhere. But in what it calls the negative universe, or the anti-world, time is completely non-existent because there's simply no physical motion. To wrap our heads around this, let's look at the author's two pairs thought experiment. Imagine you pick two mature pears off a tree. You leave one sitting out on the kitchen counter, and you pop the other one into the fridge. 5 days later, the pear on the counter has totally rotted, right? But the one in the fridge is still perfectly fresh. From a universal time perspective, sure, both pears existed for exactly 120 hours, but the text argues that specific time is what actually matters here. Because the cold temperature reduced the internal motion of that refrigerated pear, its specific time slowed way down. For that pear, a full day might have functionally been less than an hour compared to the rotting one. It's a great way to show how a rigid 24-hour day can actually mean vastly different things, depending entirely on an object's state of motion. Moving right along to Section 2, the variables of time. The author actually gives us a specific list of physical and environmental factors that stretch or compress how time is experienced. Time varies by space, speed, and location. It also changes by zone. For instance, the text claims that if someone were frozen solid in frigid ice, completely halting their physical motion, they would theoretically have unlimited time. Crazy, right? Mass is another huge variable. The text points out that larger masses naturally have longer specific timelines. That's why a diamond outlasts a piece of wood, and a stone will outlast a piece of meat. Let's look a little closer at the relativity of speed with a spaceship analogy straight from the source. The text proposes that if you fly a spaceship east, going at the exact same speed as the Earth's rotation, you'd experience a totally normal 24-hour day. But if you fly west, actively exceeding the speed of the Earth's rotation, your specific time fundamentally changes. The author calculates this wild theoretical scenario where one day for you on that ship could equal 2,400 hours for everyone back on Earth. If you kept that up, you could return home 50 years later to find all your childhood friends elderly while you are still a young person. And this is where the text brilliantly applies these physical ideas to some massive cosmological claims. The author maps out how different universe spaces drastically alter life expectancy based on mass and motion. So according to this framework, a person who might live 100 years here on Earth would only live about 30 years on the moon. Conversely, the text outlines these higher dimensional spaces, like the 1,000-year world or the 10,000-year world, where lifespans stretch out into the millennia. The author actually connects this right back to that old saying, you know the one day in heaven equals 1 year in the mortal world. But listen, you don't need a theoretical spaceship to alter your time. The text offers a much more grounded, almost poetic analogy. Picture two people walking to the exact same destination. The person who speed walks aggressively gets there super fast, sure, but their time has been mathematically compressed. The second person, though, walks slowly. They really take their time. They stop to pick up some gravel, they touch the grass, they say hello to a bird, and wave bye-bye to a passing cloud. By purposefully reducing their hurried motion and genuinely engaging with the present moment, the text claims their specific time is actively expanded. All right, Section 3, flesh versus spiritual time. We are now making a big paradigm shift from physical clocks and walking speeds over to the metaphysical. Imagine, if you will, two intersecting dimensions, an x-axis and a z-axis. The vertical x-axis represents our physical flesh. It's entirely made of matter, and it's totally constrained to travel in one strict direction, straight from the past into the future. But intersecting this is the z-axis. This horizontal line represents our spiritual body, which the author categorizes as antimatter. This spiritual z-axis isn't constrained by vertical time at all. It exists in limitless space. Now, along that vertical x-axis, our material body is locked into a rigid, unstoppable sequence: birth, growth, aging, and finally death. The text is incredibly clear on this point. Absolutely no power can stop this physical process. For human flesh, achieving eternal time in the material world is literally impossible. However, and this is key, according to the author, death is not a final end. Actually, it's more like a dimensional transfer. The text states that at the moment of death, only the material flesh perishes. The spiritual antimatter body completely escapes the constraints of the vertical present moment. It shifts onto that horizontal z-axis, traveling through time-space to begin a brand new life in an entirely different domain. Section 4, Surmounting the Clock. Let's just pause for a second to really emphasize this powerful quote from the text. Time is the key factor to the deformation of objects. Think about it. The author points out that a mountain 1,000 years ago looks completely different today. A river changes its course over a century. Even you, sitting there right now, are entirely deformed and different from who you were just 10 years ago. Time's continuous motion completely deforms all matter. So, to combat this inevitable deformation, the text asserts something that goes against the grain of modern society. Fast, highly efficient living actually shortens your life. Think of two cars. Car A is aggressively driven at 120 kilometers an hour everywhere it goes, and it gets totally scrapped in just 5 years. Car B is driven at a gentle 60 kilometers an hour and easily lasts 10 years. The author directly applies this logic to humans. People living in a worldly, frantic hurry, like competitive athletes or super ambitious professionals, experience accelerated deformation. On the flip side, those who embrace slow living, like shepherds, nuns, and Taoists, reduce their internal motion and, theoretically, live much longer. Going even further, the author issues this really stark warning against narcissism and our obsession with leaving a worldly legacy. Because time deforms everything, the text argues that all material achievements are ultimately just an empty illusion. It doesn't matter how hard you work, eventually your merits are going to turn to dust. The author bluntly asks, who among us can even remember the first and last name of our great-great-grandfather? It points out that even grand, seemingly permanent civilizations like the Roman Empire eventually fall, and eventually even the earth itself will perish. So, if the material world is just a fleeting illusion, what exactly is the solution? Well, the text outlines 5 specific antimatter tools we can use to break time's limit. They are our spirit, our consciousness, our thinking, our belief, and our soul. By consciously cultivating a peaceful mind, we dramatically reduce our frantic physical motion. And by leaning heavily into these 5 intangible tools, the author claims we can actively connect our awareness to that timeless negative universe we talked about earlier. Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, Going Against Time. This is where we hit the most abstract framework of the whole text. What does the author actually mean by this? How does a person literally go against time? To explain this, the author asks us to picture time as a forward-moving train, and we are all just sitting on it. Now, if you were to stand up and run backward at the exact same speed the train is moving forward, your relative motion would be 0. In this framework, that effectively halts your aging. And if you run backward even faster than the train is moving, you literally enter negative time and become younger. But, and this is super important, the author stresses that this isn't physical running, obviously. It's a highly advanced, reverse approach of spiritual thinking. It's traditionally suited for individuals dedicating their entire lives to self-improvement in places like Buddha and Tao temples. Now, the author fully acknowledges that this reverse thinking is incredibly difficult. They compare it to boating upstream. The text explains that this upstream battle is basically impossible for everyday people because our senses are just constantly manipulated by the material world. We're weighed down by the worldly burdens of money, chasing fame, seeking power, and just the daily grind of sustaining our families. All of these daily affairs lock us tightly into the forward momentum of that train. Which brings us to the ultimate core thesis of this entire text: surmounting. According to the author, the main goal isn't just to live longer for the sake of having more years. Surmounting means utilizing a peaceful mind to intentionally lengthen your physical life so you can buy yourself enough specific time to spiritually evolve. The whole point is to refine your consciousness and develop into a higher level spiritual structure. That way, when your flesh inevitably does fail, you are fully prepared to step seamlessly onto that horizontal z-axis. We're going to wrap up today's explainer on a pretty provocative note. The author actually pulls a quote from Jesus to drive this home. Your heart is where your treasures are. We will go where our heart is. Based on this wild framework we've explored today, it leaves us with a really fascinating question to ask ourselves. Are your treasures, your focus, and your daily energy completely tethered to the unavoidable decay of that vertical x-axis? Or are you finding ways to slow down, pick up the gravel, and expand your heart into the eternal z-axis? Something to think about, right? Thanks for joining me on this journey today, focused learners, and I will catch you in the next explainer.